So this is really Chrissy's studio.
Cool.
Oh, there she is. She's a not very good artist. There always has to be a good one and not a very good one. And she's working on a show at the moment about the coastal environment with a bunch of people at Flinders.
Okay.
And this is where my pottery comes to die. No, just when after I finish making work, just kind of store it here. So there's all kinds of bits and pieces.
Scary.
We better get out of here because...
That's nice.
We're disturbing the creative process.
No, Chrissy
see what you're
hates a chat. So this is my ever so humble studio. I don't need much. Like I just need the power, the light. In winter, it looks like a serial killer is in here because I put down that really thick plastic, that's in all the serial killers.
The blue plastic.
In like a butcher's thing.
Yeah, but I like having it open the rest of the year. Like I get lizards coming in here. And
How long have you been using this space?
25 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm a hobbyist, like 60 years of hobby, or whatever, 55. Yeah.
That's great.
This is a little commission for someone whose father likes to cook.
Beautiful.
Loves the Tommy Rough, loves fishing, and surfs.
That's cool.
And usually there's a little joke, like Finn is like, at the end of a French film, it's the end, Finn.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of like wordplay. So rough, Tommy Rough, like it's stupid.
I didn't realise you dabbled in like colours and stuff. I thought it was...
Yeah, it's called sgraffito, so it's like graffiti to scratch through. So like this has got 4 layers of colour and then
cool.
black on top. When
And then you scratch
primary
it off.
school, where you scratch through the black paint.
Oh, okay.
Same thing.
Yeah, that's what Mickey was telling me about.
Oh, okay,
I
yeah.
was on the phone to him and he said,
Yeah.
ask about Sgraffito.
Yeah, it's really nice because, the thing I like about doing what I do is it's ancient, like basically when I'm sitting here doing things, apart from the technology, it's just like it was always done. Yeah. So you feel a kind of connection to it, well, I do.
Yeah.
And this stuff is called cobalt underglaze. So this is where I just draw and paint.
On top.
And then you dip it into a clear glaze.
Yeah.
These are meant to be like big schooners.
Oh, yeah.
So footy schooners. That's why, hence the shape.
Like a big
Your
pint.
Adelaide Oval and all these.
Yeah.
Standing around.
Yeah, that would be good. Ancient
Wow, look at it,
Greeks.
it's beautiful.
Normally I try and sneak some kind of joke in, but some of these were hard.
Should we sit down? I'll perch up here.
That's a sick ringtone. Is this atonal banjo music?
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll just follow on from what you were talking about.
Yeah.
Like maybe growing up on the mid and how you know it so well, and then how you ventured up down here.
It was just this kind of idyllic beach life. We used to slide down the sandhill. I probably did a lot of damage there. All that stuff. And hung around the river in Southport.
Yeah.
I think I started surfing because I was so crap because all my mates played footy or whatever, and so every winter they would kind of disappear into playing footy. I couldn't do it, so I started surfing and I just immediately loved it. I can still remember the first time I stood up, like when I was about 11 or something.
Yeah.
I just spent every minute I could in the water after that. A lot of school hours.
Yeah. And what's the role that surfing has played in your life since then?
It's always been the main thing.
Yeah.
I think that it's why I became an artist or a craftsperson or whatever, because I wanted to do something I wanted to have some form of employment that I had control over in terms of hours and tides and all that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I've never really had a job, as my wife often reminds me. You don't know what work is. But I've always worked hard, like even, you know, like because my mum used to make pots. She was like a hobby potter who started making hobby pots, and then all of a sudden people wanted to buy them. And then people would say, I really want a pie plate with a fish on it, drawn on it. She couldn't draw, and I was just one of those kids that was drawing from a really young age. And so I didn't really like her pots very much, so I was happy to just draw alone, you know.
Put your flair on it.
And I could see that my mum was doing this thing she loved doing, and people were buying it. And without knowing it, I
You're like conditioned.
understood it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought, you can do something that you like, and your market will kind of find you. And then, so that then I can make pots in the morning, or in summer, like wait for the sea breeze, work. That was the initial idea, but I soon got sucked into just working too much.
Yeah.
But it was a nice seed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the house and the studio, like, is so nice. It feels like a true representation of you and Chrissy. Like, it's nice to have a house with so much character, and it's like literally just looks like you in a house form. Like, is that what your house was like growing up? Like, do you think you were
Big
brought
giant
up?
eyebrows and stuff. Well, the weird.
Now you say it.
Well, the weird thing is that I've had old friends visit that haven't seen me for
Yeah.
40 years or whatever, and they come to the gate and they walk in and say, "This is so much like Port Noarlunga,"
Yeah.
because we had a deep block, and Mum was a mad gardener. I married a mad gardener. And we, you know, at Port Noarlunga we had loquat trees, fig trees, all the produce and all of that. And when we first moved down here, Port Elliot had all the empty blocks.
Yeah.
So my dream was that our children would grow up in, it's so egocentric, in what I grew up in.
Yeah.
You know, because I look back and it's better than nostalgia. That was good.
Was your your parents' art on display in the house that you grew up in?
Mum, she used to make work in the house. So, and we lived, you know, at one stage there were 8 of us in there, and small house on Benny Avenue, and she used to make work on the kitchen table. So
there's 8 of you in there.
Yeah, there'd be newspapers, and then a little banding wheel, which is this thing. Yeah. So it was just one of these, and she made thousands of pots. This is hers, actually.
Wow.
Stuff would just get pushed to the side, you know, and you would eat or whatever. And when I started decorating for her, I used to turn on midday television, and she had one of those little tray tables. I would just sit there decorating pots in front of the telly. Right? So, yeah, hasn't changed that much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like such a positive way to grow up.
Yeah, I think I was lucky. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you were saying that your work kind of progressively you became more in demand. Is that when you started working at Mambo? Is that a later thing? Cause
well, what happened was I just I was kind of being hippie, you know, and so you didn't need much. I didn't need much for rent. Used to live on brown rice and lentils, still do. And so I didn't expect a whole lot. So for me then, success was selling like $100 worth of work a fortnight or something, you know.
Yeah.
I just got more personally ambitious. I wanted to make better things. I wanted to make bigger, better things. And so to do that, I just had to do more work. A couple of friends who had gone to art school said, oh, you know, if you go and study, you'll be able to really lift your game. And I was very arrogant and hesitated for too long. Not too long, but for a long time. And then eventually gave in. And then, so you go to art school, you away from the beach. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which was annoying, but I think I put all my drive from surfing into that.
Yeah.
Which is a weird thing, but and just kept making as I was at art school. And when I was at art school, I went into the surf shop at Port Lunga, which is now Priest's, but it used to be Gordon Hubbock's, right. Wind and Wave. He was a goat boat rider, and he had these like 5 pairs of wild board shorts that, and I had just seen the Mentals. The Mentals had just done a tour, and they were dressed in these wild fabrics. And I put the two things together, and they were Mambo board shorts. Mm. And I tried a pair on. Gordon said, "You can just have them because no one's going to buy this shit." You know. Not long after that, a friend that I used to make birthday cards and stuff, still do for people. And this friend said, "Your work looks kind of like Mambo, like what's going on here, and you should approach them." Mm. And so I sent them. And I didn't hear for months, and then all of a sudden I was actually at the art school doing a residency, and I got a phone call, and it was Dare who ran Mambo, and he just said, "Oh, your stuff's in production. Come to Sydney." Yeah.
Like production is they were making some Mambo stuff already.
Yeah. It was already that week. I saw this band called Jesus Jones on Rage wearing my like
that's unreal.
Yeah, it was weird. Going to Mambo was like walking into Mushroom Records or something, because all the musicians they're making no money. They were all working there. The Sunny Boys, there were 2 of the Sunny Boys.
Yeah.
Spencer P. Jones, whole bunch of people.
Wow. So cool.
It was weird. Yeah.
It was like a little hub for creatives or something.
Yeah. And Dare had this great idea. You go into a surf shop and there's just this awful stuff that looks like sportswear. Mm. And he knew a few artists he liked. And so he just started using their drawings for fabric mainly, and with Reg, it was the humour, you know. So lots of just big t-shirt prints. Yeah.
Lots of big bold colours as well.
It's funny because I didn't think I would end up doing much for them because my work was much softer. Dare and the art director Wayne thought my work was kind of, and this is a weird word now, feminine almost version.
Yeah, more sensitive feeling about it.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's probably more accurate. That it the making showed through in the drawing in a way where a lot of the other ones were quite bold and graphic.
Did they at Mambo? Did they have parameters to make it feel more Mambo, or did they ever say they get you on board and be like, just do your thing? And we just want your artwork to come through.
95% the latter.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
And
they always insisted on the work being signed, which was unheard of.
With your name
and still
at the bottom.
Largely, I think, unless someone's doing, a special little artist hub or whatever it's called. I was quite a surf history nerd. And I also had lots of great stories from the mid of, there was lots of loose characters. And so I did a series of the Mambo Tapestry. I did 3 or 4 of them. And so I did my own version of what the 12-year-old kid had read. And so I would have famous surfers, but then I would have surfers from the roaders. I'd been in the Sydney Road Board Riders, and there were lots of pretty funny stories.
Is there anything that sticks out in mind?
Well, there was a thing. Man, this is like not going to work well politically these days. But there was a guy who had a small dog, and if kids joined the club, they'd been hanging around a while like little grommets, that someone would just suddenly grab them, and then this guy would grab his dog and pull its back legs apart and rub onto the kid's nose. And it was called a Kona. And the dog was called Kelly, so it's called a Kelly Kona. And there's another...
And it was like an initiation
Yeah,
thing to the
yeah,
road.
yeah. I must admit, it was only a couple of people that really enforced that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's always a couple.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Kelly
And there was another one, there was a guy called Skid Brown. And before Priest's was a surf shop, it was like a deli kiosk. And this guy, Skid, went into the kiosk one really, really hot, crowded summer's day. And the bins in the corner were those like metal ice cream tubs. I don't know whether they have them anymore. And so in this really crowded shop, he did a poo. He sat in the corner and did a poo and walked out. So I've got a picture of that. So. Or just like
And those
nutty.
that ended up on the Mambo.
They ended up on it's on the posters. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, so these were like poster releases. Of
Yeah,
the film Mambo.
they started out as ads.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
then,
so they would be in tracks and things.
oh, okay.
The dog.
Yeah.
So a lot of Mambo ads were literally just pieces of art, or just
They
drawing,
were 80%.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then people would just associate that with the clothes, and
Yeah. Never. If you went to design school, they would say it's the opposite of what you should do for branding.
yeah,
There was a new logo. There were 4 in the season.
yeah,
You know, there would normally be a kind of overarching one,
yeah,
but there'd be lots of changes
yeah,
within. At Rushcutters Bay, one of the offices, you would walk upstairs. I would arrive off the plane in my neat little Adelaide clothes, you know, pointy shoes. Get upstairs, everyone's in thongs, and there was a wall which was basically all the roughs that artists had delivered, you know, and so the wall would be up there until they were looking at getting artwork for the season, for the range. And so I would just walk in there and think, oh no, like, because it was all so good
Yeah.
and funny and challenging. And Reg's stuff was always highly political,
yeah.
highly anti-Liberal Party, like seriously, and things that they couldn't use. Yeah,
So you reckon that wall just helped drive everyone else? Everyone would see what's up there, and then
definitely.
it just like a bit of a
Yeah.
competition.
It definitely.
Yeah.
It was for me, except I always felt I was losing. You know.
I'm sure other people probably,
Probably
felt the
just
same.
being there though, you're already winning.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
feeling
yeah, it was wild. It was. It got to a certain point after the Olympics when, you know, Mambo did the uniforms and stuff, and and all of a sudden the loud shirts went from being for younger people to being for dads at barbecues.
Yeah.
And so artists like me just got, you know, which things were changing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it largely became a bit less political.
Yeah.
But
Bit
yeah,
safer
I can't be
or
sure.
something.
At times, I think there are all kinds of things that play into what brands do.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes you can't tell.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't tell what to do.
And probably like as the brand grew, it had more pressure to, I don't know, play it safe in a
Yeah.
way.
More
But maybe I
more
don't
people
know.
involved.
Yeah.
More people
Or
involved.
even more pressure to not. And once you've gone to a certain place politically, where do you go?
Yeah.
You know,
without just going
Yeah.
in hard. Yeah.
Yeah, but and if you do that, it may not work. I think the person that took over art direction was just more involved in contemporary art and design, and we were old white men. Like there was I mean they didn't. Sorry, when I say we, I mean me. Me, white old man. Yeah, and I still used to buy stuff.
Yeah. Did Mambo then get sold?
They've been sold a couple of times.
Yeah. Because I think, well, maybe when I was younger, it got sold to Target or like
Yeah,
that for a bit, and it was-
a company called Gazelle initially bought it, and then I think that coincided with the brand just looking fuzzier or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
You don't. I must admit, I really loved it in the early days because everything was made here, and which is really nice
Yeah.
if the t-shirts are made here. And then later, when they started, Dare wanted to do some like Hawaiian style shirts, and he really liked the block printing in Indonesia, so he went there to get it made, and when they produced those, the tags said "Made near Australia." So, just another it's kind of a political joke,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what you do in the footy art now.
Well, it is. Well, what I was encouraged to do at Mambo
Yeah.
completely changed the way I decorated pots.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what angle change, but
Just
and
putting
so
like a light spin on things, like a funnier spin on your art, maybe. Or,
yeah. Also that like if you grow up making in any crafts, there are all these parameters that have been laid down for centuries, and there are ways of doing things. There's taste. There's all that stuff, and so I think I was quite formed by all that early thinking, and then all of a sudden, it was like, why can't you draw? Why can't I do Nat Young? Why can't I do a famous surfer on a pot? And so I just started doing it. In fact, I remember Wayne Golding. This is back before email, so he would send me things in the post that were like prompts, and he sent this a photograph of a pair of big jars that China had presented to Russia, I think, and they were these incredible paintings of astronauts on these ceramics, and I just thought it was a light bulb thing. It was like, oh yeah, wow, yeah, that would be an interesting thing to do. Put contemporary life. I'd done a little bit of it at art school, because I use a lot of song lyrics, and at art school I started using song lyrics to generate images for me.
Yeah.
Or an image, or I'd use an image and think, there's a song lyric that will make this more interesting.
Cool.
So it kind of started, but yeah, the Mambo really gave me license to be. It was this idea that your ideas are okay too.
Yeah. And just roll with it.
That simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You still have to edit. You still have to, but.
What do you think some of the key takeaways you had from your time at art school were?
Too many. Art school was great because I had been pretty disciplined before that, but it made me focus. I think studying and having to write about what you're doing can sharpen your understanding of what you're doing. And that sometimes you don't know what you're doing until you write it down. And then through that focus, you realize, you start writing, and then you realize, oh no, that actually doesn't make sense, And so I think it was mainly that. Art school was free then. you know.
Yeah.
That was good. But also, we would get lots of artists in residence. If there were people from international people having an exhibition in Australia, they would often come give lectures. So they were the kinds of really enriching things.
Yeah.
It also forced me to work in a more collective way, which I think was good. You know,
Collective meaning.
meaning of having to work with a bunch of people on developing things.
Yeah,
that
like
kind
collaboration.
Of,
and
collaboration.
things like that.
That's the right word.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating. It seems like the time in which all of this sort of thing started is just a beautiful time in the world's existence. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you getting a prompt in the mail of what could,
Yeah.
you know, and now everything's so instantaneous, you know?
Yeah.
And they're just different. It's,
Yeah.
there's no better or worse, but
Yeah.
in my mind, I knew it would go.
Sorry, it's,
That's good. You can take it.
it came from outer space. No.
What is that song?
No, it's just something he wrote, I think. I don't know what it is.
Your son,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. No, Darcy just said,
It's a bit egg punk.
your ringtone is crap. Here, I'll do something.
That's great. You can feel that he's kind of got the bug of like making things as
They-
well from you.
They're both makers. They can't, like, I guess you can't help it.
Yeah.
You know, like you grow up in a household where probably for the first 20 years you thought, why hasn't my dad got a decent job so that we've got, you know, whatever. And then all of a sudden you know, I think lots of people become their parents in a weird kind of way, you know.
agree.
But that period in South Australia in particular, because we had lots of social change, lots of really good, positive social change. And so it did feel a bit like, we didn't know so much, like it looks rosy, particularly from here, but there's always crap going on, there's always, you know. And the trouble now is what you said, the instantaneous aspect. Like all of a sudden people think they're chemists because they've got a phone.
Yeah. Yeah.
People know everything because they've got the phone.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Yeah.
It's like facts versus knowledge.
Yeah.
You can pull out the facts, but you've got kind of no understanding of the context. Sorry, old man talk.
No. I think it's.
It kind of
I mean,
drives.
it's things that everyone's thinking all the time as well. Like,
Yeah.
but it would be crazy growing up. Like we have in this weird little happy medium of growing up without the internet for a little bit and then getting it at like, I don't know, what, 12 or something.
Yeah.
And still having through that sort of developmental phase, like not having that thing, you know,
Yeah.
like
Accessibility,
around it.
yeah.
And now I play on my phone way too much. But,
Yeah.
yeah, from like your art's point of view, have you felt the people who support your art, has their relationship with your art changed since all of this stuff has come in? You know, like phones and the accessibility of being able to share your stuff?
The awful thing is that things like Instagram are really good for me.
Yeah.
You know, and
Well, it's a good thing. That's kind of
yeah. I didn't know it was a thing. I'd heard about it, and then someone wanted me to donate a pot to something, and it was an online auction on Instagram. And I said, oh yeah, I'll do that. And so I didn't even have a phone. So I was doing it on my laptop, and then there were a whole lot of messaging. There was no messaging on your laptop at the start with Instagram. So, and all of a sudden I was getting angry emails from people saying, you haven't answered your messages. And I said, what messages? But the moment I joined Instagram, I had a lot of followers, because potters in particular, all around the world, and other artists that might be interested in surfing culture or whatever, it's like the moment you appear, they want to see what you're doing. So for the first few years, it was just me being part of this great community that in the past was kind of from magazines, which, you know, you made the work in 1990 by the time it got published and out in the shops, it was like nearly 92. You know, it was
Yeah.
that kind of turnaround. Yes, so all of a sudden I had what felt like another kind of community. The only time I've tried to sell anything on there is if it's been like a fundraiser or something, and then you push it.
Yeah.
But it's it's kind of where I get lots of commissions from, you know. So I like that aspect of it.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, and I think it's good to focus on the positives of some of this stuff as well, because if you just look at it through this one silo lens, it's pretty...
Yeah.
I don't know, it can be pretty bleak at times.
Oh, yeah, it's hectic.
But that's good, and I feel the same way just with us being able to share things like this.
Yeah.
It does, it gives you ability to share it. But now, more than ever, it feels like without feeding the machine, the people who follow your stuff don't even see your stuff like
Yeah.
as much.
I think
Yeah,
They're seeing the
this
White
is-
Lotus shit.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
That's
This
the
is
main-
this is the impression I'm getting, because it's like all of a sudden people find you again,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
all of a sudden
I was being
there's
here
all
for
this, all this response.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the awful thing, is that all those Machiavellian plans that are being made by Meta, they're all working. You know?
Yeah.
Maybe digress from the social media side.
yeah.
I was,
No, let's get
Yeah, I don't want them to hear about it.
yeah, we don't want to feed the machine.
No.
You've spoken about music a fair bit, you know,
Yeah.
that, and well, like maybe up until when you went to Mambo, was that your late 20s, I guess?
Yeah.
But what was the role of music, or the gigs that you went to, or
Yeah,
what was the
I-
music scene like that you grew up in?
I was like a born snob.
Mm.
And so if anything was popular, I didn't like it. You know, and I was always looking for obscure things that no one else could know about, so I could brag about it, you know. And I'm still the same. It's,
Is that
you
what
know...
you do on Instagram now? Post songs that people don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
You brought it up again.
It's interesting. My sister, I think, had really good taste.
Yeah.
And so she would come home from once a week she'd bring home an LP. And so that's where you get to hear music. And I just always loved it. It was always an escape, always, and still is, if I'm lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were you listening to growing up?
Well, it was pretty broad, but lots of folk music. For some reason, I was kind of, I don't know why. I was interested. There were a lot of like 12-pound poms, or whatever they're called, who had got jobs at the oil refinery and Chrysler's. I think it was Chrysler's then. But when they came over and their kids came over, they brought all of this music culture, which was wild. And the magazines like the NME, which is crap now, but it used to be like the snottiest, snobbiest music paper in Britain.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden I was getting access to stuff that was happening there.
Yeah.
And a couple of those English guys were musicians.
Yeah.
And they were, and so they would, someone would turn up at your house with 5 albums and you would sit around and listen to them. But hard to pinpoint, because at the same time I loved Motown and all that.
Yeah.
But I didn't tell my friends.
It sounds like your music taste was kind of not associated with surfing culture, like it's
weirdly it was.
Yeah.
There was a band that I still really like called Love, who are a Los Angeles band, and they were on the soundtrack of The Hot Generation, which is a Paul Witzig surfing film from 1966.
Yeah.
So those things, and there were later, when things got really druggy, there were bands like Tully, and I think George Greeno's movie was played in London. The original Pink Floyd played to it. I guess it was the same everywhere, but again, a lot of the kids that I surfed with, like they were the first big ones into punk rock, into the Pistols,
Yeah.
Stranglers, The Clash. Guys used to go down the beach with their boards with trench coats on. You know. There's a photo of this surfer, Squizzy Taylor, and he's dressed like something from a Madness poster. You know, it was, and they were all like crazy about music, but we were all trying to outdo one another in terms of how
Finding a new
obscure
message,
you
yeah.
could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds fun.
So, and and then like I reckon I had all these folk records, and then in 1978 I sold them all because I bought a Talking Heads record, and then just started listening to other things that people didn't have.
Yeah. On to the next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's all like it's always been a thing. I always like, I always liked Dylan and things like that. I liked words. Probably I like words more than sounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And were you going to shows around that time much?
Yeah. And catching the bus from Port Noarlunga to the city and going and seeing all kinds of weird things, from the Stones to Donovan to Talking Heads, and just probably the things everyone went to.
Yeah.
There are there's a great Scottish guitar player called John Martin, and he was kind of huge in Christie's Beach, and he came a couple of times, and a whole lot of people would get on the bus or whatever,
That's cool.
go to Adelaide Town Hall.
That's cool.
Were there any gigs down south at that stage, or?
Only weird ones, like Fraternity, who were the first band that Bon Scott from AC/DC were in. They played at our school social.
Wow, that's crazy.
The Angels,
Oh, yeah.
same bands, like they played like on a
Only
Friday
things that are
afternoon.
weird. I love how these are weird.
Only, but they're weird little events.
Oh,
you know.
yeah.
And then I don't really remember. And then later, when I had friends that became bands, that joined bands, they would play at weird little gigs. At the tavern at Colonnades.
Oh, yeah.
But they were local bands.
Yeah.
And have you been in a band?
I was an awful singer in a quite a good band.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What was the
I'm
name of the band?
They're called. I'm going to blush. The Artisans, we were called.
The
But it was a joke because there's a band that we all love called Orange Juice, who are a Scottish band,
Orange juice.
and they've got this song called The Artisans, which is it's a song about the best band in the world.
Yeah.
And we thought, let's call ourselves the best band in the world.
Yeah. And did you
Yeah.
just play around the mid, or did you?
We played at the Port Noarlunga Hotel, we played at the Port Noarlunga Footy Club,
So-
but that was kind of weird because really at that stage I was a city dweller,
Oh, okay.
and we mainly played at like the Exeter. We had a guitar player for a while who was much younger than all of us called Adam Macbeth, and I think it was weird for him to play at Port Noarlunga because he grew up on Murray Road, I think, and was a bit of an introvert, oddball. So I think it's a bit weird going back and playing in front of a bunch of surfers. But the surfers were mainly, mainly into these kind of alternative musics.
Yeah.
You touched on Paul Witzig.
Yeah.
Mickey was saying that you're really inspired by, is it his brother, John?
Yeah.
And a surf photographer?
Yeah.
Can
Yeah.
you tell us about that?
Yeah. I've always, like I said, I have been like a bit of a surf nerd. And so there are a lot of images that I grew up with. And again, because of my sister surfed. And she used to buy these two magazines, Surf and Surfing World, every month and bring them home. And so I would devour them. I wouldn't read a book, but I would devour these magazines. And the images kind of stuck in my head. And so when I started drawing surfers on pots, I would often make reference to these images. And I did it for years, and then one day an email appeared from John Witzig, and I thought, oh no, because I'd used lots of his images, and I was well aware of you know, copyright, etc. And he said, "Is there anywhere I can buy your work?" And I really like your work, and I sent him an email saying, with my tail between my legs, you know, saying, "Really sorry, hope you don't." And he just said, so many people have stolen his images outright and used them outright in deplorable ways. And he said he loved the way that the redrawing changed the whole image and kind of almost changed the meaning of the thing even, you know, so, and you're putting it into a new context. And so he started, we kind of became pen pals or whatever. And then about 5 years ago, there was a show at Coffs Harbour Regional Gallery, and it was called Ripped Off. And it was John Witzig and his photos and 4 or 5 artists that had used them or were invited to use them, and including Ozzy Wright. Ozzy Wright did these great drawings and kind of flicker book style waves. Yeah, I still love John's work. I think he's like a really important Australian photographer.
Yeah.
There's a particular sensibility. So when you see his photographs, you know they're his photographs.
Yeah.
Which is
You can feel that he's
Yeah.
behind the camera.
That's
Which
right.
is hard to feel like.
Yeah. And some of the photographs, at first you look at them and think, that just looks like an everyday shot. And then you look at them and there's just something about the balance of tone and stuff that it's a particular eye. And because he edited Surfing World and he edited Surf, and I think the layout and typography of those magazines is still like embedded. You know, so quite often if I'm writing text, I finish and go, yeah, it's from like 1966.
So cool.
Well, it's funny when you realise it
Yeah.
and go, oh yeah, that's serif or whatever. Where did that come from?
Did you say he's your main inspiration, or who else would be
In terms
that
that he's the
world?
person I steal the most from.
Yeah.
And I think that's because the images are iconic. And so, yeah, inspiration's a weird one because I will often see work by people and I'm not inspired by it, I just wish I had made it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I always tell them,
Huh.
you know, like it's, particularly after like half a century, the way you work it's pretty hard to shift it. And so when you see someone who is approaching a material or a whatever in this wild way, you know, I'm just kind of in awe of them. But every now and again it does inspire me and makes me want to shift a bit,
Yeah.
you know, make things a bit looser.
Change your approach or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, and usually it'll be like the starting point
Yeah.
is the change, you know, where if I'm going to make a big jar, rather than use any kind of tools to try and make it neat, just try and make it loose.
Yeah.
Let the clay do what it wants to do, but then I get scared and I revert. No, but a bit, you know, it's. I always feel like I'm just making the same stuff, but then occasionally I have to search for an image through archives or whatever.
Yeah.
The weirdest thing is Facebook is my best archive. Facebook photos, it's weird. But all of a sudden I think, oh no, I did try.
Yeah.
You know?
Try to like approach it in a different way. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Did
Yeah.
you feel like you, throughout your work, you've kind of approached it in the same sort of sense? Not
Ye-
saying that's a bad thing. Or
No,
anything, but you feel
no,
like,
pretty much. Pretty
Yeah,
much.
that's cool.
Yeah, and then, but I think, you know, lots of good things, change is incremental, you know, and tiny. And having said that, I think there are things that I made 25 years ago that are just the same as what I make now.
Yeah.
Quite often it's just a week where you shift. And then particularly if it doesn't kind of gel with you, you know, you kind of toss it aside. I'll find things in the garden.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, there are a few things laying around have been laying around for 20 years,
Yeah.
blank.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was going to say, like, following on from that, and you said some of these have been blank and you're just waiting for something to come, like, outside of your commissions that you do, like, what's your creative process or creative output as well? Like, do you just wait until something pops in your head, or do you go and do other things that you know might help inspire you to put something on a bit of pottery? Or?
It's something that you think about a lot, but you don't want to think about too much. But it's a bit like the David Lynch thing, the small fish, or there's that.
Can you
But-
describe the David Lynch thing?
Well, I can't. You can. but
No one can describe what's going on in there.
The initial
RIP.
thing is, so a few months ago, I got asked to make some work for a show. I didn't want to make the same kind of work that I'd been making. And so after a couple of weeks of actually thinking about it, there wasn't much there, but I came up with this tiny kernel of an idea, and just started making. And then after a couple of days making, the making generates ideas. Without the idea is not going to just come.
Yeah. So you work
Although
on something small.
it does happen, which is the weird thing. But the idea that happens when you're in the midst of other things. You know, small ideas catch big whatever that is.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I kind of had a body of work, but without that bit of discipline and you have to make mistakes. That's the other thing, and that generally people don't want that, and people don't think that's a thing, that you make mistakes during development. People think you have to have this kind of light bulb moment, then you make the thing, then you make another thing.
Yeah.
But so I always feel like nothing is ever finished, except if it's a graphic for a T-shirt and someone's had to print it, you know. But in terms of my own work, it's like, I could have done that, you know, but it comes out of a kiln and it's got the glaze over it. You can't.
It seems like a common theme with people creating anything, music, albums, that you've kind of gone through that as well. It's not feeling like anything's completely done, but having to move it on to serve the next thing that comes along.
Yeah, I always, whenever I would watch a music documentary, I always found that fascinating, and I had a tiny bit of experience of it, where you're trying to nail something in the room, and you spend all this time doing it, and then all of a sudden the person with this controller and knob says, "No, we've got to move on." And so that last thing you got to isn't the thing that you were aiming for even. And then you have to build on it, kind of. It's like watching that Beatles thing, even that, you know, when they're in the studio, the really long...
The Get Back.
Yeah,
Doco,
yeah, just those kinds of decisions, and they're not even like decisions, they're just things that happen in the room.
Yeah. The discipline of them sitting down and just doing the thing.
Yeah.
You know, in the same way as what you're doing, and that's kind of like the habitual nature of it, of just like getting down, sitting there every day, showing up and just doing it.
Yeah.
And then eventually you'll just make something, and then it'll be done, and you'll be like, oh, who made that?
Yeah,
and then those
yeah,
are the ones that
yeah.
feel the best.
Yeah.
And it's so wanky to say in, like, I don't know, in words. I find it, well, I don't know, maybe that's just like ego or whatever, but like, yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, and then
yeah.
that's what, like, walking into your bathroom and looking around and feeling like,
Oh,
you're-
yeah.
I don't know, they're all
yeah.
part, it's all part of you know, as
Yeah.
a person, and then that's why I feel nice being in the bathroom,
Yeah.
you know? I don't know, it's an
Yeah.
awesome thing to share.
It's kind of interesting that whatever you're doing, it can be seen as being too much about yourself. But I think I think that you can kind of hit a point where something becomes relatable. And sometimes I think it's just it being handmade or whatever. Those tiles might be me, but they're also kind of like the history of tiles. They're they're kind of all these other, so, it's like a song, you get associations that are completely different to anyone else, but there's something that pulls you in. I think it's kind of the handmade. And in music, I think it's like that too.
Yeah, and I love the way you like the way that you speak about it, just all of your work as well, because it's like you're just really all proud of it as well, but in a way where it's like it just feels nice. I don't like not in like you're coming from a place of it's your ego. It's just like you're just proud of your work. And I think that's inspiring for other people, because sometimes it can feel weird sharing your stuff, and you have this weird mental complex with. Like, well, it's not good enough or whatever, but it just is what it is, and I think that's a nice thing to, be around. Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah, well, I like, I started posting lots of, WIP, WIP, whatever, which,
What's WIP?
work in progress.
Oh, okay.
And I was doing it because I know there are people all over the world that are making things, and I think it's interesting to see work at different stages of development and stuff, that, and I kind of like the idea that it can be a healthy thing, to show your work and not just, showing the glory shot or whatever.
Yeah.
I just try and be honest about it, like this is what it feels like, this is what the process is. Just try and avoid, words like brilliant, fantastic, awesome, sick.
Just stick to weird. These other words, weird.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I just think weird just means not unexpected.
Yeah.
Rather than, something UFO or whatever.
Yeah. I like it.
Is there anything that just pisses you off?
Generally?
Yeah, just generally. You feel extremely chill, but is there just anything that just annoys you?
No, I'm an angry man. I am an angry man, but, that's just unresolved issues, Sup riders, foilers. I like surfing alone or with a friend, or two.
Planned.
Two mainly. Mainly, I'd rather that one of them couldn't really surf. So they're just company, they're not getting in the way.
What is it about surfing that draws the creativity out of people? Like in the opposing thing, I play footy as well.
Yeah.
But there's just so much not that creative culture underneath it.
Yeah.
Like surfing, you have, for say, like your pottery and the artwork that goes on that, and then there's so much creativity that goes into surf movies, and then there's surf artwork and posters and clothing, and then, but something like footy, it seems to be just the sport, and the culture around the sport is just about the sport. It's not about art or creativity, or that snapped me out. Yeah.
Bloody Ron.
Fucking wrong.
Footy, something different. Footy is just an example of that, in my interpretation of it. But yeah, surfing, why throughout all the stages of surfing, is it still creativity and everything that comes with it still seems to seep out of it, and people still draw from it.
Yeah. I was 15 or so, then LSD and dope comes into the picture, and people who surfed who probably a lot of the time had been not so self-reflective, those drugs made them more self-reflective. It changed the way people thought. And a lot of the work I did to do with surfing is from 1967 to 1978, because these major changes occurred, and surfing had been hugely popular in the 60s because Midget Farrelly won the world contest, and that's probably why my sister started. And Weasel has old films of Seaford from 63, and there's like 30 guys out there. And so there was this huge Beach Boys and whatever resurgence back then. And surfing does seem to have had this thing where it retreated into a different culture. And then in the last, it must be 20 years, money got poured into surfing and into surfing products and all those things. And I think it took a slight turn, and now in the last few years, there's that self-reflectivity or whatever it is. I guess it's not happening in other areas. So there is still something to do with the activity, the time that you spend doing it, the time that you have around it. But I can't work out what it is.
It feels like, I mean, for me, all of those things, surfing is counterculture. So it's like people doing it before everyone else, if that makes sense, you know. Whereas maybe sport, it was like they implemented it for the entertainment of the medieval families, you know, like in, I don't know what's it called, like the royal families or whatever, and certain things, the origins of it. Whereas surfing is just like people getting a bit of wood, going into the water, same as music, just playing it.
Yeah.
And it's something that the people have sort of started, if that makes sense.
And then the competition side of surfing
is totally the foundations of it is the surfing, you know. Whereas other things, the foundations of it is for someone else's thing, but it's more of like you know, for the individual person. Yeah, and then that makes it self-reflective. Same as way as your art practice. Like it's all there's so much crossover.
Well, it's interesting because if I think about surfers and artists, the two main ones that stick out are Christian Locke and Henry Jott, and they both happen to be very good surfers. Maybe it's to do with the time and the time spent around the ocean, even. You know, that I must admit that for me, the ocean like is kind of my yoga, my solace, my, you know, when the angry man comes out, he goes to the beach. You know. And
just to touch on, because Tom said, you've never driven.
No.
And I see you riding to the beach, which is awesome. There's never just been a desire to do that, or just comes from simple living, you know, like having capacity for other things, or just out of it's just come this far.
Lazy and gutless. No,
Scared.
No, yeah. When I was 16,
that's fair.
Or everyone at Christie's Beach bought an old car, and every weekend got taken up with them, and the car up on blocks, and then when the car got fixed, driving up and down Beach Road, trying to impress girls. And it just didn't ever make any sense. I wanted my weekends to go surfing. I didn't want to, I wish now I had learned a bit about mechanics, but I started hitching when I was about 11 and just didn't stop. And I met thousands of people. I don't know any of their names, but I know them as like Snake, Bogger, Black Dick, you know, like, because you surfers, I think it's still true that surfers don't introduce themselves, you know, like, because people say, oh, you know, Pete was down there. Who's that? I don't know.
Yeah, true.
Because you don't, you know, you just know him as that really annoying guy that kept paddling to the inside of you, you know.
Are you still hitched out?
Not so much. I have when I've had to, and I still threaten Chrissy that I'll take all the money under the bed and I'll hitch, you know, to America. There's a bunch of friends that normally want someone grumpy to go surfing with, you know. But I ride a lot because since I got a mat, I surf at the Chicken Run a lot because it's crap, but on a mat, you're kind of sitting right in on the edge of the rocks, and it's still really good fun.
That's cool.
If I have to hitch again, I will. But the bike will do it. Although I don't like it. Like, I'm an old man. Like, riding past Day Street is a bit much.
Yeah. We normally round up the chat with two questions.
Yeah.
One is, what is your before they were big story? So like an artist or a band that you saw before they blew up, before they got big. And then the second is, who should people be listening to at the moment? Like, what artists you're listening to at the moment that you recommend people listen to?
This is the hardest. The only thing that springs to mind is seeing the birthday party at the Gov in a tiny room. And there weren't that many people there.
That's cool.
Yeah. The only thing I listen to that's newish is TFS, like Tropical Fuck Storm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They're just about to release a new record. as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. And I hope I can listen to it because I kind of love. I love his songwriting and his guitar playing is nuts.
And definitely probably someone that has some pretty good words. Like, as you said, like if you gravitate towards words,
Yeah.
there's a bit
Yeah.
of substance there.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Last question is, do you sit on these all day when you make your
No.
pots? Oh, I'm going to say
No.
that would be brutal.
No, he's
No,
got a back-rested
I
one,
got
yeah.
that beautiful chair from.
Surely we finish on that song playing.
Yeah, that's great. That thing goes off like crazy.
You're a popular man.
No, this is weird. That's why it's out here because no one ever rings me.
Well, yeah, thanks so much for letting us.
Yeah.
No,
It's
no worries.
inspiring
No worries.
just
no
to
worries.
see in this.
It's been really great to talk to you because, like, you've obviously just made your life around your art and supported yourself through your art, which
Yeah.
is super inspiring.
But
for
it's
us.
still the same. It's still lentils and rice. Like I
Yeah.
still, always been very frugal and still will be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And probably worried the same amount when I was 16.
Yeah.
and just live within your means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's. I haven't had a young person say that for a long time.
Yeah.
Like you live.
That's Paddy Rams.
Yeah,
Awesome.
no, I just I always think that when I see someone with like a full shirt of tats,
Yeah.
I always think, fuck, man, that's like half a house.
A full shirt of tats.
You know?
That's half a. Yeah.
Well,
It's
I
true.
look at it and think, I'm fucking getting a gun.
Yeah.
You know,
Fuck, that's so funny.
wed tattoos out the front.
Yeah.
Yeah, just start doing them here.
Yeah.
You'd probably make a
Your
killing doing
favorite
tattoos.
surfer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your favorite surfer here.
You get a pot as well as a
Yeah,
free
yeah.
tap.
You get a mug. Mug and tap.
Yeah.
Yeah. Combo deal.
Yeah.
All right.
Cupo tap.
Combo deal.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's crazy.
No worries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it very much.
Pleasure and privilege.
Thank you, Mark.